working to end violent conflict before, during, and after a crisis. The coolest thing about Search is that 90% of our staff are locals to the areas that they work in. So that's who we're going to hear from today. A searcher, which is what we call our staff, and one of our champions working to build a better world. So Mo and Basel, we're so excited to have you here today.
Very excited to be here.
Good, good. Okay, so today's talk, I'm sure you know this because you're here, but today's talk is The Explosion's Echo, a Lebanese peace builder and a Syrian refugee find humanity amidst destruction. So on August 4th, the explosion in Beirut caused at least 190 deaths, 6,500 injuries, $10 to $15 billion in property damage, and left an estimated 300,000 people homeless. And this is a city that was already facing COVID, political unrest, and a refugee crisis. So today we're going to talk to two amazing human beings who were literally impacted by the blast. During the chaos, they did their best to help, and now in the aftermath, they're doing their best to rebuild and support those in need. So we're going to get to the explosion in a minute, but both Mo and Basel have incredible stories. So Mo, in just a second, we're going to get to you, but let's start with Basel. So Basel, every refugee's path is different. What was it like growing up in Syria? And can you share a little bit with us about how you came to Lebanon?
First of all, I would like to thank you very much for the work you guys put to get this event together. I'm very excited to be with you. Thank you very much for having this platform for us to speak our stories. My life in Syria was a simple, happy life. Peaceful life, just like any other kid. Seeing friends, I am a member of a very loving family of 5 who did what they can and to give us a decent life. Like most of the kids in Syria, my focus was school, playing games with my friends, seeing people, seeing neighbors, having this peaceful community life. And in my case, I had music all the time with me, accompanying me through my life. I have been a piano player for 24 years, composing music as well. So I have a passion for environment, sustainability, and construction about environments. I have started my studies later on after I graduated from school in civil engineering in my hometown Latakia, Syria. It's a beautiful city by the Mediterranean. And I have obtained my degree in civil and structural engineering in 2011. And then I decided afterwards to go to Lebanon and continue my studies because of the events that started happening in Syria in 2011. Those events were related to conflicts rising because of the political situation there and the protests. So we started seeing signs of war erupting in Syria, conflicts, started hearing gunshots and stuff that we weren't really used to. So that's when I decided to flee the country and go to Lebanon.
Okay. So you went to Lebanon and you studied there at Lebanon, but you still went back to visit your family because I think your parents were still in Syria. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were going back during this time? What did you see and what did you experience?
When I first left Syria, I had only 2 hours to pack my bags and leave Syria. I still remember my mom telling me that you have 2 hours before you leave Syria because in Syria it's obligatory for all male Syrians to go to the military service and serve in the army after they finish their studies. So I still remembered that I could not process during these 2 hours how I'm going to leave the people I know behind and the family I know behind. So I always had this in mind that after I get the chance to go back and visit Syria safely, I would. Of course, the first time I went back, it was in 2012, after I had spent 6 months in Lebanon. While I was going back in the cab, I started remembering all the events that happened and led me to leave Syria forever. I always had the perseverance of going back and seeing my country, seeing my city, seeing the people I love and the friends I love. Unfortunately, it was always dangerous to go back and visit Syria. I remember the first time I went there, I got stuck at the border. There were gunshots happening between two groups of extremists on the borders. They were shooting at us, and we were in the middle. So we had to run and hide until the situation got a little bit better. I started noticing after we moved on from that towards Latakia, started noticing the frustration on the people I knew. The streets were different, the people were different, my family was different. The streets that I knew were different. Unfortunately, it wasn't such a good experience going back to that after the first time I went there, basically.
Okay. And so then you began to kind of build a life for yourself in Lebanon. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? What was it like to live in Lebanon, and how are Syrian refugees kind of treated in general?
Well, my purpose of coming to Lebanon was to pursue further studies in environmental engineering and in construction management. So up until 2015, I was studying in Lebanon. I had my life kind of going well with everything bad happening in Syria. Of course, I was always worried about my parents and about the friends and the people I knew there. Um, it wasn't really easy, and it's still not easy to live as a refugee in Lebanon because we don't have the right legislative structure, the system, the law that protects refugees. As everybody might know that the Lebanese government suspended all refugee claims in May 2015. So refugees that are registered with the UNHCR in Lebanon are only registered with the UNHCR in Lebanon. They're not refugees in the government, so they cannot really benefit from the services that are provided by the government to these refugees. This puts more weight on the refugees in Lebanon because they cannot legally get a job here, which put them in a place of abuse sometimes from the employer. They could not get they cannot get the jobs that they need, that they're qualified for. They work minimum wage jobs. They're not able to go back to their countries. I would like to highlight the history between the Syrian and the Lebanese government because
Yeah.
Syria has occupied Lebanon for almost 30 years during
Okay.
the Lebanese civil war.
Mm-hmm.
That backfired on the Lebanese, on the Syrian people that had nothing to do with the authorities or the Syrian authorities. So they were stuck sometimes with individual mistakes, putting them in danger, discrimination, and all types of discrimination, I would say.
Okay, so there was that long history between the countries that then really impacted the Syrian refugees when they came over. So this wasn't just
Yes,
like a clean slate. There's this long history that came along with this, and so
unfortunately.
okay, so it's, I can't imagine what it's like to be in a country and not be able to legally be there. How challenging that must be, and what you must face. And is it also, do you also just like feel the resentment, just not so much legally, but also just like like being in different rooms, walking the streets? Do you experience it kind of all the time?
I would say most of the time, yes. For people who do not, we don't have a structure that of integration. These refugees need to be integrated in a healthy way into the Lebanese community. We did not have that. We still do not have that. People come here out of fear, out of persecution and discrimination in their own country, and they come to Lebanon and they do not have a clear structure on how to integrate into the Lebanese community. This creates more danger on these refugees, and that makes them feel in danger on a daily basis, discriminated against on a daily basis. It's not because of the Lebanese people only, not all of Lebanese people, but it's because of the laws itself. There is no clear law to protect these refugees.
Okay. And so you've been working to empower your community, but this also includes another subset that faces another layer of discrimination. So can you share a little bit about your work and what you've been doing with the LGBTQ refugee community and what they're experiencing?
being a refugee myself, an LGBT refugee myself, I have worked, I'm still working with a local NGO. This NGO, I'm managing a program. The project aims to map out these Syrian refugees, LGBT community, and bring them all together in order to empower them, in order to give them the right tools and the right knowledge for them to fight for their rights, to know their rights, and to be a true activists. All LGBT people are true activists. There is always a small, I always tell them that there is a small activist in all of us. We are discriminated against, not as Syrians only, but as Syrian and Lebanese from the LGBT community. And my aim in this project is to have the capacity building that they need, the sessions that they need, the tools for advocacy, for activism, for campaigning, in order to be able to have these empowered people from the LGBT community, in order to be able to change the laws, in order to be able to integrate the LGBT community within the Lebanese law and within the Syrian law as well. Okay. So this project always focuses on these Syrian activists and give them the right tools to stand against all discrimination.
And to empower them. And so what specific dangers does the LGBTQ community face when just on a daily basis?
Well, first of all, if we want to talk about the danger that faces them from a political point of view, there is the Act 534 of the Lebanese Penal Code that condemns the unnatural intercourse between two people up to 1 year in prison. And people, we have heard and documented a lot of stories from LGBT community of them being raped in prison, discriminated against in prison and outside of prison. I know a lot of friends and a lot of chosen family here that faces daily challenges. Some of them are disowned by their own family. Some of them got killed by the community members based on political or religious background. Not being able to get jobs also, which is very, very bad. Not being able to get jobs because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender identity. The lack of knowledge due to suppression in Syria and Lebanon have put us in a weak place not to be able to fight for our rights here as LGBT people. So these violations are growing more and more against LGBT community. We are documenting every day in Lebanon and Syria a lot of violations against the LGBT community. But we will keep fighting to get that fundamental human rights law like any other humans, especially in Lebanon.
So you've been fighting to get these kind of rights and to make progress on this issue. And then I know you became a champion of Search. So can you tell me a little bit about how you came to work for Search and kind of how that all came about?
Well, I had been let go from my job because of the economic crisis that Lebanon has been going through since September 2019. So in November, I got laid off from my job as a site engineer. And I had well, everything happens for a reason. I always say that. So basically on January, I learned more about Search for Common Ground, this international NGO in Lebanon. I decided to go and get an interview there and to volunteer with them. And it was such a privilege working with so many amazing people. We have learned a lot. We have built our capacities as well, just like I am doing and paying back to the community right now. We are targeting conflicts. We are trying to find common ground for this conflict. We are learning how to analyze the problem and understanding the situation at whole. But now, as a champion with them, I am very, very happy to be a part of their team. And yeah, so basically, it's a privilege working with Mo. It's a privilege working with the other champions. It's nice to have a purpose. It's good to have a purpose, and this purpose is unified towards helping these communities, especially our communities.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear. I know. I can't wait to hear from Mo in a second. And I'm sure it's a little bit fun working with Mo. Probably not like,
A little
just a little bit. Awesome. So this brings us to the explosion. So so like I feel like we have a good idea of your story. You have this really kind of beautiful childhood. Crisis started. You left to Lebanon. You've experienced what was happening in Syria, and then the explosion happens. Can you tell us exactly where you were when it happened, August 4th?
Well, on August 4th, I was sitting exactly right here with my laptop in front of me and in my house in Mar Mikhail, which is an area that got greatly affected by the explosions. I'm 1.2 kilometers away from the explosion site. I was sitting in the living room, working, normal life. It was a normal day. We started smelling smoke, and we did not know that something big is going to happen like that. And the explosion was big enough that the first boom actually. I have this habit of talking on the phone while walking, so I was talking to my friend. And I was walking to the corridor of the house, and that's when the other explosion happened, the impact, the shock wave. The shock wave was strong enough to actually break down the whole house, the chandeliers, the doors, the windows. I'm very lucky that I wasn't harmed, but I flew because of the pressure. It was a big impact. So I flew and hit the door with my left side, my head. I was out for 5 seconds, and then later on, I started waking out of it, and I started hearing the wailing of the people in the building and in the streets around us. We could not really comprehend. I could not really comprehend what was going on because I did not believe that I was not going to die. I thought I was already dead. So I went down in the building, and there was our neighbor who got stuck under the door with her broken leg. So she gave me her daughter, and I had to go down with her daughter and leave her up because we thought it was a airstrike from Israel, and we did not know that it was an explosion. We thought we were gonna die. I still remember when I got to the ground floor. I still remember the chaos that we experienced, the destruction, blood, the people, the smell, the sounds, the screams. I can go on and on and on with the things that we heard and experienced. It was a terrible explosion. It was a terrible disaster. I remember calling my brother and saying goodbye because uh, we all thought that we were gonna die. Um, but fortunately, I was lucky enough not to get harmed, just unlike a lot of other people, a lot of Lebanese people and Syrian people that I know that are still in the hospital right now. After that, I had to go with my friend in the car. Um, our other friend is a nurse in a hospital that was greatly damaged by the explosion. So we had to go and take her from one hospital to another. We did not know the magnitude of the explosion until we started seeing the streets broken, the hospitals. They were getting all the patients out of the hospital because it was about to collapse. Um, Basically, she had glass shards in her head, and we had to bring her from one hospital to another until we were lucky enough to find a free bed in one of those hospitals far away from Beirut. It was a very, very destructive experience on mentally and physically for all of us.
I can't even imagine. And you were so close to the blast. You said 1.7 kilometers away.
1.2, 1.2
1.2.
kilometers. Yeah.
Okay. So you were right there. And then
Yeah.
Mo, you were 9 kilometers away. So you were a lot farther away, but what did you experience when it happened?
So when we're talking 9 kilometers and 1 kilometers, this is the direct line. So I was, if you want to drive from Basel's house to my house, it's a long drive. So you could imagine how 9 kilometers is actually like really far away.
Yeah.
When the explosion happened, I knew instantly that this was an explosion. because it had the familiar shockwave. What I did first was, I was driving my scooter, of course. What I did first is return to my friend, like I just left his place. Return to my friend, tell him that I'm safe, check up on him. He's safe as well. I started talking to my colleagues saying that an explosion happened in my area. It's so close, it's over here. And you'd see my colleagues saying, like, it's not a laughing matter, but at that time it was like insane. They were saying, they were naming other areas which are really far away, and I'm insisting that the explosion happened here.
Wow.
And yeah, to my shock, actually, one of my friends was sitting in his car, and his car's windows collapsed inside. I had he was injured from the explosion as well. So seeing all this and seeing the smoke rising above the buildings gave this feeling that the explosion is too close. And seeing people actually saying different, like mentioning different locations. And actually one of our colleagues in the mountains, which is like 50 kilometers away, said they felt it, not heard it, felt it, which was like, it was so insane. It was like, it's beyond like funny or it's I don't know. So what I did instantly was take my scooter and actually go there, check what happened, try to help people as I have a background in paramedics. I started driving slowly at first because, of course, I was convinced the explosion is right here. So along the way, I started seeing people like putting bandages or like towels on their heads. People were injured on the streets, which did actually fortify this feeling that the explosion is very near. I reached an area a couple of blocks away where I thought the explosion was, and I see the smoke like still far. I thought, well, maybe it's like at the end of the street, let's go there. I kept on driving for 15 minutes to actually where I reached Basel's area, that's Mar Mikhail, where that streets were full of glass. So I was technically driving on glass, which is very dangerous, like to drive a scooter on glass. At that point, somebody mentioned that, like an army personnel mentioned that it was the port. I kept on driving there. I saw someone, of pure chance, I saw someone very confused. He said his father was in the port. So I took him over and we went directly to the port to actually check what happened. I went inside. I actually entered the port. I've seen the port before, and this is like a whole completely different feeling. I had this feeling back in previous wars where you'd actually do not recognize the area that you're in. And it's such a hollow feeling. It's not sadness, it's not frustration, it's not sorrow, it's a hollow feeling. So this happened, yes. After this, I just drove back to the affected areas where people were clustering to actually try to help people, which in whatever way felt possible. Whether it was taking injured people on my scooter, of course, people conscious enough to drive along with the scooter, and cleaning the streets. Of course, the amount of shards was insane. Even filling fuel tanks for cars which were stuck in the explosion. Helping open the traffic, which was a very big issue. People were confused to a point where cars were stuck, and it needed just a person to direct these cars to actually open the roads. So I thought I did what I actually could do with the experience I actually had.
Yeah, no, so Mo, there's so much to unpack here. So one, it's just incredible that this happened and you drove towards the blast. I think a lot of us would have, run away from it. So the fact that you actually went in and you were trying to see what you could do to help and find answers is absolutely incredible. And then a few times when you're talking, you mentioned that this was a familiar feeling. You said wars had happened before. How old were you when you experienced your first explosion?
Okay, so I was born in 1988. That year, Lebanon had a full-scale war. So I was born in a war actually. And then the first conscious war that I lived was in 1996. I was like 8 years old. This is the first time I felt terrified, like consciously terrified. Then there was a war, a full-scale war sorry, not a full-scale. There was a war in 2000, then a full-scale war in 2006. Then the Syrian conflict happened. And so not less, and like in periods, not less, or like in not less than 4 years, you always have a war, which was something that you live by. You survive knowing that there will be a war, not in a very short duration. And in the period between 2007 and 2018, if I remember correctly, there were several suicide bombers and car bombs happening around my house, which, if I remember correctly, there were um, eight directly next to my house. There were other suicide bombers in different areas. So you actually get so you have a set of things that you remember to do as soon as an explosion happens, which is check up on your family, run to the streets to help someone, run away from the street again for fear of another explosion. So all these things, all this survival kit or explosion kit that you have, and you grow during these years, you actually keep it with you at all times because you never know when the next explosion will happen.
My goodness. And so how do you think that those experiences have shaped you and what you've decided to do for a career as a peace builder?
Yeah. So for my personality, this experience actually shaped a lot of it in terms of living in survival mode 24/7, which is somehow interesting when you see your community or your surrounding or your the fellow people who are living in this country joke about the next big thing that will happen. There are always these kind of comments or jokes, if you want to call them, to actually adapt to this thing that is happening. But what this taught me, this whole wars and many civil wars that always happen, or clashes between communities that happen on if you want a monthly basis or sometimes like in shorter intervals, they actually like enforce this belief that this way does not work. I know like lots of people do actually believe in fighting your way into what you want, but if this has been going on since I don't know when, since the Lebanese civil war, let's say, although Lebanon was founded on wars even before the even prehistory, and so if from then till now nobody actually won, nobody's in control. Says, I mean, it's not that I hate war. Of course I do, but it's not that. It's just technically this isn't working. So we need to find a different way around it. I did actually work with civil society companies, initiatives, startups, and a lot of individuals or organizations who actually believed in something different. And I did actually just tried different experiences to check which one would work the most. I was introduced to Search for Common Ground like 4 years ago, and I felt this is my thing. This is where I feel I belong.
Yeah, you felt your calling. Hey, no, I can totally relate to that feeling of just like seeing destructive ways that we deal with conflict and we deal with each other and we deal with difference, and just seeing that it actually just does not work. It's just very pragmatic. Like, yes, it's like a feel-good thing, but it's also just very pragmatic where it's like, no, this does not help. This does not work. And, you mentioned coming to Search, and I know Basel was mentioning our other searchers in the Lebanon office. So if they're watching, we love you guys. Can you, and I know that, so I know, Mo, that you weren't the only one to kind of step in and help. Can you just briefly kind of mention what some of the other searchers were doing in your office after this happened?
Sure. So Search for Common Ground is not a humanitarian organization or an organization that works directly at times of impact. And this, but knowing this, searchers and other colleagues did actually want to do something, to step in and do something right at the time of the explosion. Our office was badly damaged. Few of our colleagues were injured as well. A few of their houses were destroyed as well. And a lot of our champions and coaches working on this project, to be exact, were injured like Basel, and their houses were actually badly damaged. And this pushed us a step back. But even though a lot of searchers who weren't directly impacted wanted to contribute to the actual response, because there was a visible so let's not say it this way. The only people who acted, who responded to the explosion, were the people themselves, and the people and the organizations, the civil society organizations who work on the ground, who know the people, who know the target audience. These are the people who responded up until a month after the explosion, where, if I remember correctly, the government started mobilizing some of their departments. And so we had different teams in search that were set up naturally. We had a couple of colleagues who started an initiative where they bought items that the people on the ground would need and started distributing them. And we had other colleagues who did actually, who did different initiatives, from surveying and surveying the injured, the injured people and destroyed homes, and it actually work on the ground to actually help them rebuild, reconstruct, or as some of us did put it, preserve their privacy, because a lot of people did actually lose their, their doors, their windows, so they'd actually be living on the street.
Yeah, no, I cannot even imagine. It's incredible how you guys have just all stepped up. So, and I think this is a good segue into the One Act campaign. So can you tell us a little bit about that and where that came from and what you guys are doing?
Okay, sure. So the One Act campaign, which was released by Search for Common Ground Lebanon, and Basel is part of it. This campaign actually serves to highlight the initiatives and the initiative, whether done by organizations, companies, or individuals who did actually respond directly to the explosion, or are still responding to the explosion till now. Because what we thought was, a lot of these people or initiatives or organizations did respond, but nobody knew about this. So what we felt meant in this time was actually not to start an initiative of our own. We did actually build synergies with different projects, but what we felt was more meaningful was to thank these individuals or organizations, highlight what they did, and in some ways it was just beautiful to see this, because as I thought before, the mainstream media did its job by showing the amount of destruction, showing the fear, showing the terror. So what we wanted to do different was actually show the people what we saw in the second day of the explosion, which is you go to the damaged areas, like really sad, you had your sad face on, and you go there and you just see like seas of people who are holding brushes, the big brush, and
the brooms and
different
stuff.
So the brooms, and trying to cleaning the streets, helping the people. You'd see people with nylon bags and adhesives to actually secure the doors and windows without glass. You'd see lots of people who did amazing jobs on the ground. You see even companies who were badly damaged by the economic crisis before the explosion, and some of them might actually had their franchises or their branches destroyed, but you see them like giving food to the people and
Wow.
helping the volunteers, actually giving the volunteers the juice to actually maintain their work on the ground, which was like, I mean, going in there and seeing just people there, non-uniformed people there, was actually was amazing.
That sounds incredible. Yeah, I live out here on the West Coast, and we're dealing with fires, and the fires are so destructive. But what is amazing is to see people come together, and they're giving they're campers, they're providing food, they're washing clothes, and just how people have been able to step up. It's really inspiring, and so I'm so glad that you guys are doing this campaign. We're going to get to questions soon. I'm sure a lot of you are wanting to ask some questions, but I know that you've also been working with Basel and another initiative that's starting next week. So Basel, would you be able to just kind of briefly mention what you guys are going to do? Because this is so cool.
Definitely. As Mo mentioned, a lot of people from the civil society, from the civil community, from the people, neighbors, friends, everybody's helping Beirut. Everybody's helping the affected people in Beirut. And this is a very small initiative that I'm launching next week. It's about targeting the parents in very damaged area, even worse than my area, which were 6, maybe 100 to 1 kilometers away from the explosion. They don't have houses anymore. They don't have streets anymore. They don't have infrastructure anymore. And these people have kids. And these kids are already traumatized because of the experiences that Mo shared with us. Recent events, recent political events. These kids, they need the support. And I thought that maybe I should target the parents on how to deal with their kids to get them out of this trauma, on how to deal with PTSD for kids, provide them with games, maybe that will get their mind off of the area that they have to live in now, providing them with food if applicable, and trying to bring this harmony of the family-oriented harmony back to those communities. And I believe that these kids are going to grow up and they're going to learn from this. But if we are to interfere right now on how these parents should grieve for what happened and at the same time deal with their kids through their PTSDs, maybe they will grow a little bit healthier.
Oh my gosh, so amazing. I love it so much. This is, I think, as a parent dealing with loss, and you're dealing with your own grief and you're dealing with your children, like it has to be so hard to think of what to do. And so you guys providing the support is incredible. Same thing, back here on the West Coast, we've opened up our expo for families that have lost their homes in the burn. And one of the mental health specialists, what her ask was for games, so that the kids and people could kind of play and get their mind off of those things and start to heal. So I think it's so amazing. Thank you guys so much for this discussion, and I'm hogging all of your time, so now I want to open it up for our attendees and our audience. So if you guys have questions, start writing them into the Q&A or into the chat now. We'd love to hear from you. And before I get to the questions, I also want to mention, if you want to support Search for Common Ground in this work, and support Search for Common Ground's peace builders like Mo on Basel, we're also going to leave a donation link on here. So any amount helps, and thank you for your support. Okay, so here's some questions.
Jessica, can I say something before?
Please.
Yeah. As part of the One Act campaign, the One Up campaign as well, we are actually sharing also links and places where people would go and get assistance, whether people affected in the Beirut explosion or in a wider area all over Lebanon for people who are affected in the devastating economic crisis that we're passing through right now. So if anyone knows any people in need, could actually direct them to the One Act platform. Maybe you could share links after the or during the interview.
Yes, absolutely. We'll make sure that our wonderful helpers in the background, if you guys can help share that link to the One Act campaign, that would be amazing. And so I see that we had a question up here from Sebastian from Rwanda. And he says, how do you think, sorry, it's shifting up a little bit. Here we go. How do you think the situation of peace and security in Lebanon can be handled in order to be lasting? So like, what do you think needs to happen for there to be sustainable peace in Lebanon?
So I think it's a multi-directional approach. So what I think we need actually is to develop stronger communities where people would feel safe enough in their communities. So this is one point. The second point would be dialogue between different communities to actually start seeing each other as people who actually deserve dignity and empathy. And I would think as well, actually also so what I'm saying is that when I say communities, I don't really mean only Lebanese people or Lebanese citizens, but the different communities who live in Lebanon, whether they are Lebanese, Syrian, Palestinian, or any other nationality living in here. So I think, yeah, these are two of the well-needed approaches in Lebanon right now. I'm not sure if Basel, you want to add something?
I completely agree with you, Mo. And I think that I know for sure that Lebanon has a lot of interesting, amazing people with so much qualifications, so many abilities from all communities, not only LGBT, but all communities, Syrians, Lebanese, Palestinians, just like Mo said. And I think that unifying these people in one channel towards solving something political, whether it was or any other problem, I think this is not bigger than us, as everybody say. This is not bigger than us. We are the change and we are the future. And these people and these kids that we're helping and these communities, whether it was LGBT or not, when we unify our effort together into having a true discussion on the field, not just by theoretically saying it on the media or on the TV, we need to come together. Now is the time to come together after the explosion, after a huge disaster like that. I think it's our time now to shine, to give ideas, to be motivated, not feel invaluable or weak. No, I know that we have been through a lot in this country, but this country deserves a second chance with everybody living in it, and they have the ability to do that. So I would say focusing our efforts and focusing our energy towards a healthy channel into solving, into building peace.
Yeah. No, that's so inspiring that this is the moment. This is actually an opportunity to really come together. And it's so inspiring that you guys have the people, and it's what shows. I mean, you have people that are stepping up right now and helping each other. And, you know, if that's all directed towards having, you know, having this peaceful, prosperous society, like that can be achieved as well. So super inspiring. We got another question here from Khalid. For Basel, so working on LGBT related advocacy, what are the major breakthroughs you have witnessed recently, and at the government and or community level? Major breakthroughs.
Okay, we are always scared in Syria to talk about LGBT communities. It's unknown. So in Lebanon, when we talk about it as Syrian LGBT people, like the project I'm implementing with these activists, I'm seeing a lot of progress because these people actually have this activism qualifications in them, and they have the advocacy that they need. They have the subjects that they need to work on. And I see a lot of breakthrough because now we have 3 or 4 judges. I know it's a very limited number, but we have 3 to 4 judges in Lebanon where they did not condemn unnatural sexual encounter between 2 people. They refused to go by the Act 534 in the Penal Code of the Lebanon Penal Code. There is small progress, but this progress is not measurable sometimes, but it's still progress. And I believe that if you are able to influence one person in your life, this person can grow up to be an amazing influence to everybody else. You never know how life changes. You never know how you can say something that gets stuck in someone's head, and this someone can go and grow, and it might be the turning point for a lot of things. We shouldn't feel weak as LGBT people here. I know that we are discriminated against every single day of our lives, but this will only bring us together. And what I'm doing here is just a small initiative out of a lot of initiatives that are happening to the LGBT community here. So no matter how invaluable you think you are, no matter how weak, you are still a human being. You still deserve to live and to fight for your rights and for your fundamental rights. And we're going to keep going with that. Nothing is going to let us down.
Oh my gosh, Basel, it's so inspiring. Thank you for that. And I can sense your hope and your passion, your determination. So thank you so much. And okay, and so we have another question from Maria. And so Maria asked, she says, it looks like a lot of trust has been lost in the government in the wake of the explosion and its handling of the aftermath. Is there hope for a peaceful solution and collaboration between different actors, so civil society, companies, NGOs, and the government?
So it's a little bit a tricky question here. So the people, so the government offices, from municipalities to ministries to parliament or whatever governmental office is there, the people are open to actually working with them as long as this office has a proven record of doing something on the ground. Okay. So yeah, so the people are like, technically the civil defense firefighters are part of the government the government's offices, and we do like work with these people. Some municipalities do actually work by the book. Who has like there are several success stories who have like who did amazing work all over the country, and these are people who inspire you to actually work with them. There are different names who did something great in our in the political scene, and these are people we would actually work with them. If I may, I wanted to comment on what Basel said, and particularly
please.
Question. So it's some kind of a call for organizations, companies, or whoever is listening, whether startups or initiatives, whoever is starting a project or a business somewhere, do actually like I hope that you put some kind of conscious quota where you actually include people from who are considered minorities or from weaker communities in your actual projects, even if in your books or in your papers you do not actually have this quota. So just put it in mind, because these people do actually they have inspiring people in them. They could actually bring a lot of color, a lot of new experience or perspective into your projects. Whether it's a company or like a food company or an NGO or whatever, something interesting will happen if you include different people.
Yeah, no, again, with just I love how pragmatic you are, that it's not just about being like good, but it's actually helpful for these companies to bring in people with different perspectives and different backgrounds. We often talk about how difference can be a pathway to innovation. So the more different kind of perspectives and people that you bring in, like it's actually really inspiring, and it can help your business and your company and your organization. So I'm so glad that you brought that up and move some of where the responsibility is kind of for all of us in this. And so we have another question here, and this question is referring to are people concerned about this disaster happening again? So I'm sure people are terrified when it happened. Are they worried that it's going to happen again? And are there precautions being taken right now so that this doesn't occur again?
Would you like to answer that, Mo?
Go, Basel. Go, Basel.
it's very normal for everybody to think that this is going to happen again. I have people, friends, myself also. We are still scared this will happen again. It's PTSD. So when we're walking in the streets, you hear something loud happening, you just kind of, because
Flinch.
it's, yeah, exactly. And this flinching is because of the PTSD that we've been through. And it's a huge disaster, just because I cannot stress on how big and destructive it is. I know you've seen a lot of things on media. I know you've seen a lot of broken buildings from drones, but when you come closely to the places that we lived in, to the memories, to the drinks, to the parties, to the gatherings, it's when you feel the true destruction. I know people crying every day still and feeling worried of what's going to happen next, because they don't have a safe place anymore. Their homes, their bars, their restaurants, their gathering places, they're gone now. And that only helps in predicting the worst. And that's why we step in. That's why we're here. We need hope. And it's might happen again, but we will be prepared, and more prepared the next time. Hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, in terms of the short answer, as Basel said, yes, it will happen again. We're basically living on. I don't know if you're familiar with the old Windows game, the Minesweeper. You just click somewhere, it explodes. It's a very familiar feeling. We're all ready to the next big thing that's going to happen, and but in terms of precautions, our Red Cross teams and other civil defense institutions or organizations have more experience now. This is our only mainly precaution, and the people actually know better what to do now in terms of when something big, when the next big thing will happen again. So in terms of precaution, we're relying on people and their experiences. And I would just like to note that the streets, so there is a huge meaning to what was destroyed in terms of the port, in terms of, because Lebanon is closed from all other sides, we only have the port to actually reach out to the other.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we have a conflict in Syria, and we closed our border, our south borders with our south borders. So yeah, our only exit, because we're people who like to mingle historically. So our only exit is through the port. The port exploded. The other areas which are affected were our waterfront, which we had the biggest festivals, the biggest nightclubs. The streets also that exploded that were destroyed actually were heritage streets, which were unrenovated since, I don't know, since whenever. So pre-explosion, you'd walk down the streets and you see these old balconies. Like at some point I was scared that these balconies would just fall off, you know?
Yeah.
Just because they weren't renovated for so long. And then not only Mar Mikhail and other areas as well, like Zutak and then central Beirut and these different areas which actually were the soul of Beirut. And then it's as if because we were so attached to our identities, the seafaring people, the people who like to mingle with other nationalities and other people, and people who did like their heritage, their culture, and the people who like to party and who like to have fun. It's as if our, because we like this heritage itself killed us. These very balconies fell on the heads of people.
Oh my gosh. So it's more, so you're saying this is like more than just a destruction of buildings. This is like these are things these are memories. These are places that held meaning to identity and history and you know what it means. I hadn't even thought of that. Thank you for sharing that, Mo. That really brings into perspective the destruction in a whole other light that I had not really considered. Okay, so we want to wrap this up soon, and so I'm going to combine the last questions that we have from the audience, and then I want to give you guys a kind of a last word here. So Maxwell, hi Maxwell. As you're watching. So Maxwell, and we have them from Waleed, are asking about, so Maxwell's asking about new conflict dividing lines, and Waleed is asking about how you think this disaster has impacted xenophobia. So I think those might be two interesting things that we can kind of bring together. I don't know who wants to go first, Mo or Basel, who wants to tackle that? New dividing lines with the blast and xenophobia?
Mhm. So before the explosion in 1 week, if I remember correctly, or more, a little bit more, you had nurses and hospital staff who were kicked out of their work because of the economic crisis. You have foreign workers who did actually help people in their houses, or did the minor jobs on the ground. These people were also laid off, and they actually slept in front of their embassies for a week. Because they did not have money to actually go back to their countries. These people were the first respondents on the explosion. So in a point, the people we were so much racist against were the first people who helped. And in the second point, there were different emerging dividing lines between. So Beirut is a very colorful mixture of communities and identities. Some communities were supported more than others for different reasons, and these new dividing lines emerged between these communities, where you'd see actually aid workers afraid to go to other communities to help them, although they needed help as well, they needed support as well. You'd see people closing on themselves, rejecting these. So it's reciprocal. You know, you fear helping people, people will reject you even if you try to help them as well. So you have dividing lines in terms of this. You have also political dividing lines where people from different political parties accuse others of this genocide, if I may. And so mainly these are the dividing points, the dividing lines that I actually think of right now.
Okay.
Basel, do you want to add?
No, I completely agree with you, Mo. I think these are the dividing lines that I can think of right now. For xenophobia, I think that people are now understanding the help that other communities have provided and still provide. I know a lot of Syrians and Palestinians and Iraqis helping the Lebanese community, no matter the nationality. Now they're helping, now they have something to do to show away from the media and how they want us to be divided. We are one, as I already said this, we are one in this crime. Let's say it's a crime. It's a crime what happened in the port. So basically, I think it has lowered the risk of xenophobia, let's say, because these communities are coming together now. Like I believe, I'm from my experience, these communities are coming together now more than ever to get over what happened and to help each other. And they still are doing it. Like you don't see any governmental intervention right now, nothing that weighs depending on the explosion that happened. You see just people with brooms and cleaning glasses, cleaning neighbors' houses, providing food from their own houses, initiative from NGOs and local NGOs. The government is doing the minimum that they can do and with regards to the explosion response. So xenophobia, it affected that positively because now they see that other communities are actually jumping in to help no matter what. And I would like to highlight that 1/3 of the people who died in the explosions are not Lebanese, they're mostly Syrians and Palestinians. So they are as affected as the Lebanese people, and they are one community when it comes to talking about response to this explosion.
Well, you guys, thank you so much. We're gonna wrap up. We're gonna wrap up now. It's good to hear. There's been so much. It's heartbreaking to hear what has happened, but you guys are both so inspiring, and to hear how all these communities are stepping up in Beirut to help each other. It's really it's really, really inspiring. Completely inspired by what both of you do. And I just want to convey the gratitude. I see that we're already getting comments and thanking you guys for sharing your stories with us and sharing what you do and sharing this perspective that we often don't hear. We often hear just kind of several filters before it actually gets down to what's happening on the ground. So thank you so much. For those of you listening, if you would like to make sure that you're always invited to these events, and make sure that you sign up for our Pathways. If you haven't, our Pathways pledge, make sure you always get invited to our Pathways pledge. We'll make sure to share this on social media so that other people can hear your guys' story if they couldn't make it to the Facebook Live. And yes, and Mo, do you want to leave us with a final thought on what do you want to make sure that people know before leaving here today?
So for people who did actually come to Lebanon before, and there are these familiar comments where the food is great, the weather is awesome, the people are nice. We want more of this and less of the explosions.
Okay, let people know what you're really known for. And Basel, what about you?
I would like to leave a small advice to everybody that's going through this, especially the LGBT community, which is my community. I know it's hard. I know it requires a lot of patience and perseverance, commitment. I know it's demotivating most of the time, but it's during times of adversity and crisis where our abilities and survival skills are best put to use. So I really hope that we stand stronger together as a community, no matter our backgrounds.
Awesome. Well, thanks you guys so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you guys so much. All right. Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.